Welcome to the Economics Design Podcast, where we discuss a lot of our work that revolves around development and implementation of blockchain economies. We often also venture out to discuss current concerns or trends, etc., within the space. And today we have Andrea, our experienced consultant, joining us to discuss the recent trend that we've observed of large Web 2.0 companies shifting to the Web 3.0 space. So I'd love to hear more about your story, Andrea, and your background. How did you move into this space?
Thanks a lot, Amman. Thanks for setting this up. Yeah, I recently joined economics design. I started into focusing into crypto and Web3 since 2017. I mean, I was still at the university, but got into the rabbit hole of crypto and blockchain. Of course, everything started with speculation. Then I started realizing what were the real values of blockchain. And let's say all the blockchain in decentralized applications and all the startups that are building in the space. So I think this is quite interesting, and maybe most of the discussion today is going to bring this up. Thanks for having me, and thanks a lot.
Yeah, I completely agree with you because as a junior analyst intern myself, this is the first time I'm entering the space, and there's a lot of speculation on my side as well. It's slowly getting better, and I'm realizing that definitely the space is well established. And we kind of see this also, as mentioned, because of big companies like JPMorgan entering the space. But let's double click on the idea of speculation and stereotypes. I think most of the people who enter the space because they kind of look at it as a get rich quick scheme, and there's a lot of volatility in the market, and there's questions about intrinsic value of Bitcoin, if there's anything actually valuable in this space that can be kind of translated to real world applications. So on that note, what do you think about the stereotypes in this space? Do you think the volatility can be stabilized? Do you think there is intrinsic value in Bitcoin, Ethereum? What is your take on the stereotypes?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Actually, I really think the stereotypes, this market, this Web3 sector is full of stereotypes, especially from people that are starting to learn about it. Maybe speculation is the first thing that everyone is watching at the beginning. The volatility, of course, of tokens and coins, and maybe even energy consumption. I mean, especially when it regards to proof of work blockchains or like Bitcoin. I mean, we are full of stereotypes. Most of them have been addressed, and most of the issues have been maybe fixed during the years. But it's still a market which is still early in the development. I really believe that intrinsic value is something that has been built in blockchain and crypto. It's something not really easy to be understood. Let's say Bitcoin started as something that was an exception to currencies, an alternative to traditional fiat currencies. But nowadays is shifting to digital gold, so which is something completely different. At the same time, we have Ethereum, which is nowadays something like a blockchain infrastructure, so an technology infrastructure, even though it started with an ICO, so the launch of the token and like a startup, but it's shifting to just an infrastructure. And then we have all of these tokens, all of these startups that are launching the other tokens. And it's really about how well the product and the service that they are offering is well established, and how is the traction of the startups. So I really think even though traditional banks and even traditional authorities are still addressing the thing that in crypto there is no intrinsic value, there is no value in these tokens, I really think it's something that needs to be studied more. So an example could be Bitcoin as digital gold, Ethereum as blockchain infrastructure. Let's say Uniswap and the other tokens and other startups that are offering their services, and at the same time they have real revenues. So there is the intrinsic value. But there is still something that needs to be developed and well discovered during years.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. You know how I told you how my speculation is kind of dialing down in the space? It's partially because of Mark Cuban as well. Because I was going through something recently and he was talking about how the iPhone came out ages ago, but it only started exploding once Facebook and these kind of apps went mobile. So I feel like there's time for this space to explode, because it's a space that needs to kind of target the mass market, which is still not happened as of now. But as you mentioned, the space is still growing and kind of exploding with new startups coming up. What do you think about the energy consumption in this case? Because with such high levels of growth, how do you think that it can be sustainable to use the energy responsibly instead of kind of, taxing our resources in the real world?
Yeah, I really think this is one of the first stereotypes that is still needs to be addressed, even though for proof of work blockchains, especially for Bitcoin, most of the energy consumption nowadays comes from sustainable sources. I mean, if we take a look at the recent reports on this, most of the energy, at least 50%, 50 to 70% of energy consumption from Bitcoin mining comes from sustainable sources nowadays. And I really think that even this kind of this topic and this issue of the energy consumption is something that can be really, can be really fixed thanks to Bitcoin and the incentivation of Bitcoin itself. Because at the same time, miners have this cost of the energy, and they will always try to lower this price. So this way, they are going to find and look for energy consumption outside of their countries or somewhere where there are more incentives, and this usually comes from the sustainable sources. So this is something changing. Even Ethereum had to change from proof of work to proof of stake also for this reason. But this is for sure something that has been, I mean, even internet nowadays or in the past, everyone was saying that it was really energy consuming, but at the same time, it changes. And if a technology is really needed, then it's something that is going to be addressed, and not being a problem anymore.
Definitely. Okay. That makes a lot of sense to me. And what do you think about these companies who are moving into this space? How do you think they're going to be tackling these stereotypes? Like, let me try to elaborate this a bit further by giving you an example. Um, for example, JPMorgan is just now releasing 2-3 tokenization projects. I think Ferrari also had started accepting crypto payments. How do you think these large companies that are moving into the space are going to affect the volatility and the other stereotypes that we have mentioned?
I really think that these corporates can have a big role on not only volatility, but mainly in letting this market really grow and make it more bold and compliant, let's say. So even volatility afterwards is something that is going to be changed for sure. If we take a look at the Bitcoin prices in the last months and last years, especially volatility went definitely down. But it's crypto market and Web3 in general is still really small in comparison to Web2 companies and the traditional markets. So for sure, this company entering the Web3 sector are going to fix some of the current issues that were maybe also in the traditional markets in the past. So it's just a matter of time, I would say. And their initiatives for sure are going to be starting in the next coming years for sure, and something has been built already. But what's your view? What do you feel is? Do you think that the Web3 community is also feeling this kind of stereotypes, or is it something that just up from outside is saying?
I definitely think that the users within the space don't feel as many stereotypes, but there are certain things that are like factual. For example, energy consumption. We do know that the growing space of Ethereum and Bitcoin is kind of causing a stress on how sustainably they can consume the energy, because as more users move into the space, there's more data that's being revolved around, more data to work with, more energy that ends up getting consumed. Um, Other than that, I think volatility is obviously another stereotype that you cannot deny, because I think it's also partially because everything is digital. But the main concern, I think, or the main reason why this space is very promising is because of its ability to kind of stay decentralized, provide security and complete anonymity. I mean, there are so many protocols that are coming up, with a new protocol called Mina that's also in the works, where they're working with technology that allows people to kind of get loans without even revealing their credit scores. And I think the main driver of the space is the innovation that it has, and the possibility of innovation that it kind of encourages. And because of that, I think Web 3.0 is where these companies are moving to.
Why do you think? Why do you think they haven't started yet to really delve into Web3 initiatives, and they didn't jump yet completely into Web3? What is your view?
They still haven't, to be honest, because these huge companies, they make headlines about moving into the space and kind of having their own tokenization projects. BlackRock's opening an ETF, but we kind of fail to fathom the size of these companies. So for them, this capital that they're putting in might not be, like, maybe might not even be 10% of their portfolio, the risks that they're taking. And I think that is something that we need to be mindful of moving ahead, because it makes sense that these companies are moving into the space, so the space might be more established. And it allows more users also to be more open to kind of going into the space and not looking into the stereotypes of getting hacked.
I really think your view is completely correct. I mean, sometimes we just miss that these huge corporates really need to have a regulatory framework that needs to be well established. I mean, they always need to be compliant. They can just launch token and say, well, Lambo, and then everything is fixed. I mean, this is also interesting to corporates, but at the same time, they need to be more compliant and really focus on what is their regulation worldwide and not only in their country. So that is really interesting. I mean, as you mentioned, lots of projects have been started into Web3 from Web2 corporates, mainly from luxury companies trying to accept crypto as a mean of payment, or even NFT campaigns that were something to be launched for their users, for maybe the community engagement. And then on the other side, we have JPMorgan or Blackrock. When Blackrock says something, then all the market is going to follow. So that is from the financial institutions' point of view. Most of the projects that have been going on are for sure in terms of the tokenization, real world assets tokenization, and asset management has been something really interested to tokenization and these transitions of the markets. This is also something that I've been involved in the past when I was still working for PwC, supporting these with big giants and financial institutions. I really think that tokenization is going to be a big thing, a big transition of all the traditional markets on blockchain, or somehow to fiat tokens, the tokenized deposits and stable coins, in order to have a cash leg and also have the asset leg, so the equity or bonds or all the financial instruments as security tokens on a blockchain. And what is really interesting is that all the actors, all the agents that are involved in the asset management industry are going to share the same registry, so the same blockchain and distributed ledger, in order to also to gain the benefits of everything on the same ledger, and even sharing this between all the agents. This is going to for sure reduce the costs and also reduce timing, and at the same time offering benefits not only to the companies itself and the agents, but also to users and final investors. So this is something that is going to be built.
And let's move a bit further from asset management companies, because I completely get your point, and there has to be a balance between ledgers and moving into the market and taking the right risks. But what about companies that are more traditional, like Ferrari and Gucci, who are moving into the space as well? What kind of services and use cases do you think are applicable to these kind of companies?
Yeah, usually they start by receiving workshops or even just feasibility studies when they really just realize what is the real value into Web3 that can be addressed also and interesting for their company. So they usually take external support through consulting, and then they start to develop their own teams, and they integrate internal knowledge, and that teams that could be definitely interested only on developing this kind of initiatives. And then there are also call for startups or even just corporate venture capital when they decide to acquire these startups and really build something that is going to be their product or services that is going to expand their offering in general. So usually this is the way the big giants or financial institutions or corporates are going to develop this kind of services into Web3. But still, there is a lot of work to be done. I mean, they really need to realize more, which is the real value of crypto, which is not only launching the new token that goes to the moon, but it's also real value that they can bring, and they can also use blockchain as an infrastructure, as a technology, not only as the speculative side.
I definitely agree with you. As I move deeper into the space, I kind of understand more and more where you're coming from and how it all makes sense, using blockchain as infrastructure and seeing Bitcoin as the new digital gold. So another question that I wanted to dive deeper into and understand your point of view on was how Web3 kind of praises its ability to be decentralized. And I wanted to understand your perspective on basically the blockchain trilemma. Many argue that centralization is kind of inevitable. And we see this with Ethereum, right? When a developer is working on a Web3 app, it's going to definitely choose the option to fetch data from a third party, and kind of, since it's more convenient. But by doing this, you kind of move towards a more centralized structure. Do you see these companies who are moving in currently collaborate with any of these protocols? Do you see maybe a JPMorgan X Ethereum collab happening anytime soon? Or do you see any risks that are going to be kind of highlighted because of these companies moving into the space? What does this mean for like the centralization risks that are posed in Web 3.0?
I will go for the long story short answer. Actually, I mean, I don't think we're going to see this kind of partnerships. But at the same time, for sure, JP Morgan or even these giants are going to use Ethereum as an infrastructure or these technologies. And going back to the decentralization topic and the trilemma, for sure, when I started looking into crypto, I was dreaming a world of full decentralization and something like this. But at the same time, then I started to realize that decentralization comes with a cost. And at the same time, it's not something that can be built in such a short time. For sure, we need decentralization for Ethereum and all the infrastructure layer that we are going to use as a technology. So that is definitely needed. Otherwise, we are going to have few initiatives that may be somehow corrupted or can really feel the issues of not having something that is really decentralized, but it is really impartial, let's say. But at the same time, when it comes to the applications built on top of this technology, at least at the beginning, when there are just startups developing this, you can't dream decentralization is something that is coming since day one. maybe you need centralization just to control at first, at least, the development of the project. And then in the coming years, in 3 to 5 years, maybe even the applications may become decentralized. But this is something that really needs to be addressed. And we can't have a world of full decentralization, even though sometimes it's something really needed, but it really needs time. It's something like the intrinsic value of few of the projects and the crypto itself. It needs still needs time.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about security? Um, do you see these companies who are moving into the space? Do you see them struggling with security, or do you see them going to be prepared? I mean, you've already mentioned that these companies are going to, consult people before moving into the space and, hire the services required. How do you see the cost structure for these companies who are moving into the space? Do you see it going to be extremely high cost to enter this space, or in general, what do you think are the barriers of entry for these companies moving into it?
Yeah, of course, it really depends on the kind of company, the kind of initiatives they're launching. When it comes to institutional financial applications, for sure, the first service that needs to be set up is the custody. I mean, they need to custody somehow these new assets and have their private keys and public keys and whatever, the custody solution. And they always need support of other institutions that maybe started earlier, or even just using tech providers like the main big giants like Fireblocks or Metago or this kind of companies that always support the companies to have the first custody. And then they also need to develop, maybe for crypto payments, they have other tech providers that they could leverage in order to avoid, and at least at the beginning, mitigate the risk of volatility, of loss of funds and this kind of issues. But in general, they need to be to really delve into blockchain and crypto and create also internal knowledge in order to develop these initiatives. If they just come for the launch of a new NFT campaign without any value for users, then it's going to be, for sure, it's going to be a problem for them and the sector itself. Because if you're launching a new initiative into Web3 and it fails, then you're going to say that everything is just unuseful and there is no value in crypto. So this is actually a damage for the whole sector. So this is also something that consulting firms need to be focused on when they are leaving this kind of services.
Definitely. I mean, it makes sense also. Like if the set of expertise is in this space, then you should obviously deploy it and help these companies transition into the space much more smoothly. But what about the users? Do you see these companies kind of carry their traditional users into the space? I mean, definitely they're going to be targeting new users in Web 3.0 and the users who are already predominantly in the space. But what about consumers? Consumers who are, traditionally living in the real world in the Web 2.0 space. How do you see them transitioning into the space with the companies? Or do you see that happening at all?
Yeah, for sure. From the company's point of view, they are trying to look for new clients, and maybe also these new generations that are more used to crypto, and maybe also that were not regarding to luxury companies. Of course, they are looking for new clients, maybe early crypto investors that have value to be invested and spent. So this is actually the first target. So they are not trying to bring their former clients into Web3, but maybe target new clients, so new clients, new users. But when it comes to users that are not used to crypto, sorry for the joke, and it really depends on what are their main interests. For sure, at first they may just see at the speculative side, but at the same time, when the companies will really explain that blockchain is just a new technology that can really bring benefits to the clients, to the final users, for, let's say, giving value to assets, maybe gaming assets or assets that were before was really complex to give value and were really liquid. Somehow blockchain can be a real value even for these kind of users. So sometimes it really depends on the kind of initiatives they are going to set up, but this is something that is going to be addressed in the future.
Okay. Makes sense. Finally, I have to ask you one last question. Um, we see these companies kind of talk about blockchain tokenization, and obviously, you just mentioned how there's a lot of value for blockchain in general and its applications. But I see blockchain tokenization very strongly tied with crypto. And the way crypto's images in the Web 2.0 users' mind is that this is sus or this is a get rich quick scheme. So, my question to you is to the point that do you see at some point tokenization and blockchain being separated from crypto and being kind of applied in scenarios where, crypto is not even in the picture?
I mean, it could be, or at least this could be one way of seeing the topic. But at the same time, I feel like even when you're using Ethereum as an infrastructure layer, there is, of course, you're using the blockchain, but there is no blockchain without crypto. I mean,
Yes.
crypto, like with the Bitcoin or the Ethereum, are the assets or the economic incentive that really helps that blockchain, that infrastructure to be developed, to be secure, to be decentralized. So maybe even a corporate that is going to use Ethereum as an infrastructure, maybe they don't really know how that works, but at the same time, that is really strongly linked to the crypto itself as the token or the coin or that blockchain. So I don't see crypto and blockchain as something separate, even though most of the companies or even in the previous years, everyone was talking about crypto and maybe saying that blockchain is something valuable, but crypto is just bullshit and just scam. But this is not something separate. You can see blockchain and crypto as a separate thing.
Okay. So, according to you, crypto's image is slowly going to improve for sure because blockchain is something that is going to be tied to crypto, anyways. It kind of has crypto, kind of gives it additional security. And I have loved having you on this podcast. And for the viewers, stay tuned for our next podcast. It's going to be something very interesting.
Thanks a lot, Amman. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Yes.